City of Stevens Point Board of Park Commissioners meeting, recorded November 2nd, 2022.
All right, good evening, everybody. Want to welcome you to the November 2nd Board of Park Commissioners meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Director Kramer, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Freckman. Here. Ledusky. Here. Hall.
Here.
Alder Kiemer.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Shabilsky.
Here.
Alder Short.
Here.
Sorensen.
Here.
Wynn.
Here.
Alder Zarazua.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Now we'll jump down.
100%.
It's the first time in a while. It's very exciting. All right, agenda item number 2, approval of the October 5, 2022 meeting minutes. They are in your packet.
So moved.
I
Gludeski,
second.
Sue Hall. So we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Motion, minutes are approved. Agenda item number 3, presentation by the Forestry Department intern. It is my pleasure to introduce Arua de Castro. If you wouldn't mind, I will read a quick introduction, and then Arua will turn it over to you. If you wouldn't mind getting up to the podium, as soon as I get done reading this, we'll have you start. So this year in the Forestry Department had an intern working on help to update the city's street tree inventory. All existing street trees were cataloged, but vacant planting sites were not. The last time vacant tree planting sites were inventory was 1995. The city has changed a little since then, and Arua de Castro was the intern selected for the project. He's an international student from Brazil, majoring in ecology restoration. Arua will explain his intern project, and we'll talk about the results and why it is useful information. Arua, turn it over to you.
Thank you. If you want to skip to the next slide, please. So this last summer I was an intern for the Forestry Department here at the City of Stevens Point. And we have, the major objective was to update the existing trees as well as the vacant tree planting spots inventory for the city. And the second part of this project was more academic related, which was like what I used to satisfy the requirements for my internship at the university. So that's why I divided it into different parts. So the part 2, we were trying to categorize the population and structure of the existing trees in the city. We also wanted to estimate the benefits generated by each tree based on their genera, so their tree family. We did it in that way because, given the scope of this project, academically speaking, I just separated that and made it a little easier, more understanding, and less numbers, actually. The other objective as well was to categorize which species, families, were the best at sequestrating carbon here in the city. So the way we did that, it was that we had 2 different components. The first one was the field component, where we had a vehicle, which I drove in every single street of the city of Stevens Point, all the length of every single street. And a fun fact is, I probably, if I remember right, it was around like 1,000 to like 1,100 miles that I have driven this past summer. I'm going in every street and sometimes going back and rechecking to make sure that every tree, like the spots were correct and everything else. We use an iPad and the Field Maps application by Esri, which is just like a portable software for GIS. And then we had this beautiful eligibility requirements table where I would go out on the streets and assess every single sidewalk, and they had to satisfy every single requirement that you can see in this table. And obviously the most important one is the width of the boulevard, which was a minimum of 4 feet. And then there's this other standards that they had to fit in as well to be eligible to make part of the vacant tree planting inventory to add a new planting spot. The second component of this project was the office component, which kind of sounds silly a little bit, but it's one of the most important parts of it, which we utilize Excel, Access, ArcGIS Pro, and the iTree software, which I don't know if any one of you guys are familiar with the iTree software. It's a software developed by the Forestry, the USF, and a couple other natural resources management governmental organizations, where they make it available and free for anyone to add an inventory or add a tree and estimate like what sort of benefits that tree can provide to a certain community or a specific area. So there are several different cities throughout the country that are using this software to do this sort of work as well, like we did. Following to the results, satisfying the first major overall goal goal, which was to update the vacant tree planting spots. Like he said, the last time it was in 1995 when they did this work, so it's been quite a while. We identified around 1,200 new planting spots in comparison to the 1995 inventory. Now, you got to keep it in mind that like every year there are several trees that are being cut down, trees that go down because of a storm or diseases and everything like that. So it's, the city grew a lot and lots of new spots were found. Obviously, there's 1,200 new ones. The next component, the next result that we got was the population composition, which is, like I said before, divided by tree families. So primarily, the tree species composition here in the city of Stevens Point, it's composed by primarily maples, and then there's ashes, lilacs, basswood, apple, locust, oak, hackberry, elm, and gecko. And then there's several other families that account for 21.4% of the total number of trees that we have here. The next thing we looked at was the population structure. So I know tables are always very complicated. I try to display this in an easier way, but I can't think of an easier way or better way to visualize this. We can see the different DBH classes and the different tree species with their corresponding percentages. So taking a closer look at that, you can see that everything is highly skewed to the left. So meaning that there's a lot of smaller and younger trees. And what does that mean to the Forestry Department is that there's going to be a lot of work to take care of these trees, because these trees, when they're young, they're very susceptible to diseases. They're very susceptible to like climate changes, such as like drought or floods and diseases as well. So it takes a lot of work to take care of that. And kind of, a tree being bigger or smaller doesn't necessarily dictate how much carbon or benefits they're going to be provided to the community. When I say benefit, I'm sorry, I should have clarified this. When I say benefits, it's just ecological services that a tree is provided to the city, such as storing, sequestrating carbon, reducing runoff, or decreasing the city hotspot effects of, with the temperature, producing oxygen as well. But we primarily focused on the carbon sequestration aspect of things. And the other one that I thought that was pretty interesting as well, it was the runoff aspect, since we are in an area which is very sandy. So I think that that's pretty important. The next aspect of the results that we're going to be looking at is the benefits summary. So this is only the top 10 most popular species families that we had in the inventory. And there's lots of numbers there, and I'm not going to explain in detail how those numbers are generated. If you'd like to know more about that, I have a complete written report that's over 150 pages, if anyone would like to look at it. Yeah, which 2/3 of it are pretty much just tables. Well, so looking at the benefits summary table here, we can see that obviously the maple species are the ones who provide the most benefits to the city due to its number, right? So it's kind of biased for us to just be like, okay, the maple are the best species over here in the city of Stevens Point because they're providing the most services for our city, which it would be kind of like a wrong sort of approach to it. But we can see that there's approximately 1,990, oh, sorry, wrong number, 43 tons a year of carbon that's sequestrated by this species. And these 10 species account for almost 80% of the trees in town. So to put this into perspective, I looked into the Wisconsin DNR website, and they have some resources where they can show you how much carbon it's being put out in the atmosphere in your city in Wisconsin. So if anyone would like to do that, there's a way to do that. So the city of Stevens Point in the year of 2020 generated around 213 tons of carbon. That released 213 tons of carbon to the atmosphere. And the trees that we have in town currently that the Forestry Department takes care of are sequestrating 43 tons of those 213. So it's a pretty large number. But as you saw, the trees are highly skewed to the left, so they're all small. So we're counting on lots of smaller trees and some scattered larger trees to add to this number. So if you stop to think about it, that number could perhaps even double, because those trees are, within the 0 to like 10 dBH class. The dBH is the diameter of the breast height, and those numbers can be definitely pumped up, not only by taking care of the trees and having those trees grow bigger and more vigorously, as well as adding species that sequestrate more carbon. And due to that, I also wanted to figure out what species, given a DBH class, would sequestrate the most carbon. So that is what's represented here in this next table. I don't know if everyone is familiar with the Katsura species. This is the Japanese lilac family. The cottonwood would be cottonwoods and some other populous species, which are aspens and things like that. So we can see that the Katsura species are the ones that kind of they sequestrate the most carbon in average within all the DBH classes. You can see them like 3 times, from all the way from 0 to 24 inches. They're the primary species that sequestrate the most carbon. So this is somewhat of a hint that, okay, that's a good tree to be planted out in town because it's giving us the most carbon sequestrated throughout 0 all the way to 24 inches. So all in all, we figured out how many trees, how many new planting spots there were, and we did some assessments on how much carbon can be sequestrated and all that. I think that this last table, it could be one of the most useful ones in regards of the academic aspect of this internship, because this is just showcasing us that, you know, we can also choose tree species to plant in town based on their physical aspects, such as beauty, but you can also focus and try to plant trees that are going to be sequestrating more carbon. That just depends on the goals of what the community is looking for. And that was pretty much the whole internship. So if you guys have any questions about anything, just feel free to address them right now.
Thanks. Thank you for that work and for the presentation. You were looking at street trees.
Yes.
Right. Can we get any sense beyond, what's in the right of way in terms of other trees on private property, in parks, whatever?
Well, so this is only the, how can I phrase this? Like public urban trees, the trees that are on the boulevard, right? And that's the only numbers that I got. So if you were to do something in regards to trying to figure out how much carbon is being sequestrated, like throughout the whole city, accounting for the public trees, yes, there are ways to do this. One of the ways could be, to do an association with the people that live in the city, and go there and get the data on these trees, which pretty much the only data you need to do this. These are also, it's important to remember, gross estimations of like how much carbon they are sequestrating, because there's more data that could be added to make it more accurate, and this is also doing estimations based on their family. So it's not down specifically to a species. However, you could do that as well. But in regards, you could just go to a citizen's house or private property and collect the DBH of each tree that they have in there, and you wouldn't even really need to plot that with the GIS. You only need like the data in an Excel sheet or something like that, where you're going to be importing to that software, and then it's sent to them where they're going to do the processing of the data, which takes, depending on the size of the data set, it would take like, half a day or so. But you could definitely do that in the private area. And there's other resources in there as well. That is just one of the resources that I have, where you could also assess how much carbon is being sequestrated based on the canopy cover of each tree. And nowadays there are softwares where people can identify the trees based on aerial imagery to identify the species based on the pattern of the canopy. So
that's the canopy. That's getting a sense of the size of the tree. That's not the shade provided.
yes.
Because there's also separately a cooling effect, right?
Yes.
Thanks.
Other questions? Please.
Is there some way, I'm not sure who to ask, if it should be Dan or Todd, or if it should be you, but is there some way that the city can utilize all the work that you put into this, all the information that we gathered from it? How could we apply it in the city?
I think that this information, first off, the updated vacant tree planting inventory, that one can be used in a matter where it will help the city forester, Todd Ernster, to decide where to plant these new trees. And by having that on a on the GIS on a map, you can actually like visually see and decide where you're going to be selecting and trying to prioritize where you're going to use that. In regards to the carbon sequestration and the ecological services provided to the community, it kind of depends on what the goal of the city is. So let's say if you guys want to try to be one of the best cities in Wisconsin that sequestrate the most carbon, or it's like you just are breaking even on how much carbon you're producing, how much is being absorbed by the public trees, that would be another thing that then you could use the last table where I was kind of trying to model how much carbon would be sequestrated by each species, and then prioritize on planting those species instead of giving importance to the beauty aspect of things. So it kind of depends on what you really want to do. What is the goal of the management plan? So all this information is definitely very useful to write a management plan or to help to, make any modifications in the current management plan. So it's all a matter of perspective and goals.
Thank you.
Todd?
So to answer your question, yet the grant that you approved last month, it's gonna.
Todd, come up front.
Okay. The grant we applied for next year that you approved, it's gonna go hand in hand if we get the grant with this information where we're gonna look at the carbon sequestration, or there's even depending on what the costs come in, also doing the canopy cover, that whole assessment thing. So yeah, it's gonna be all very useful information.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, there's other data that can be collected as well to make like different estimations of benefits as well. Because the only thing that we are using here is the DBH, and Todd's been slowly but steadily updating the DBH of the trees throughout town since he got in charge. But I think that would be a very important aspect of this, of continuing this work on having someone to actually come out, measure the height of the trees, update the DBHs of the trees. And sometimes you don't even have to measure the canopy, because if you have the height and the DBH, there are other scientists out there who have like dedicated their life on doing modeling to estimate how much canopy a tree has based on their DBH and height. So I think that could be one thing that could be done to improve these numbers.
Thank you.
And this might be a question more longitudinally, like historically. We've seen that's a significant increase, and even in 27 years in street trees. So is there an intentionality, as you were getting ready to do this survey, did you stumble across why we've got more street trees now? Was there a change in public works philosophy in terms of making sure that there's additional boulevard? What has led to, it looks like about 2,000 additional street trees in 27 years, and is that normal? Or have we done something different in our road designs and things like that have actually enhanced our ability to add more street trees?
I think, to put it simply, it's the city just grew. It just expanded.
Okay.
And I think maybe Todd will be better in answering this part of the question, but I'm not quite sure if every single construction of streets are given priority on having boulevards that are a minimum of 4 feet to qualify to have a tree planted there. There were, I think it was Fifth Avenue, right? On the west end of Fifth Avenue, they just redid it, and there were very few trees there. And now that they redid it, there's boulevards that are 6 feet wide, and you can plant virtually at least 2 trees per house.
Wow.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll add is obviously we've worked through things like emerald ash borer in recent years too, where we've had to replace a number of trees that we've had to take down and we've lost the disease to. But the Forestry Department definitely works closely with all rural construction projects. They meet weekly, actually, as they're going through it, trying to prioritize planting of trees. I don't know if the numbers have really gone up as much as we'd like to probably see them, but what we do try to be really intentional about whenever the roads go in, that we try to plant the boulevards whenever applicable. Okay. Todd, obviously, you can add more to that if you'd like.
We've just been very aggressive in trying to plant more trees in the last 20 or so years, and but we don't want to plant more trees than we can take care of.
Sure.
So that's the big thing, because if we get a dry stretch, it's a lot of watering, and it doesn't do any good. I hate replanting trees. So we've just been very aggressive, and there's been some more road construction, and that component of adding trees to those streets have been included in that.
No, I appreciate that, Todd, because that shows intentionality in the city's part to enhance the planting of trees in the boulevards and street trees. So I think that was what I was hoping, is that we have been intentionally doing this all along, and that's part of the reason why the trees have increased. The numbers have.
Yep.
Yeah, to add to that, I didn't showcase those numbers in the slide presentation, but in 1995 there were approximately 6,400 existing trees, in addition to the 2,000 and odd numbers of like vacant tree planting spots. In the current inventory, there are approximately 7,600 trees, existing trees, and then 4,200 new planting spots. So it did increase by quite a lot, I'd say. Even though there's like about, I'd say what, like 20 to 30 trees that are cut down or go down because of diseases or storms or.
We lose about 80 to 90 trees per year. Whether it's disease, drought, whatever, it's about 80 or 90 trees per year.
Yes.
You know, when you plant trees, do you take into consideration like the strength of the tree, you know, against storms that, you know, deeper roots?
That's why we can't plant silver maple or willow or, yeah. So yeah, we take all that into consideration.
Any other questions?
Other questions for Ottawa?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Alder's there as well.
I love that out of all the places in the world you could have picked to study,
I was waiting for that.
shared your knowledge and research with us, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'll just add to that, Ottawa's been a great addition to the team. We like having the interns, but his personality fit in great. Todd's raved about him numerous times, how the crew really took to him, and obviously you can see he's a very, very bright mind, so it's great to have him with us. So great job, appreciate all your help this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4. Just as a reminder, we have these next 4 agenda items are tied together. We also have included the most current naming rights policy or policy in your handout packet. We will be discussing that, and Dan also has a pretty detailed memo to this group regarding these next 4 agenda items. So we'll go ahead and move into agenda item number 4, deciding parcel, and you all can read the number to be a city park.
So I'll summarize the memo, a little less detail maybe what the memo was written, but on the screen you can see, I'm going to refer to this as the Benz Lane parcel. So the history on this, if you recall, is that about, I think it's almost 2 years ago now, when we started talking about the Plover River Crossing Trail, we were trying to establish a route of where the trail could actually go. We started along the DOT right-of-way, and where we ultimately landed is the city acquired 2.65 acres that does front to Benz Lane, which is highlighted here in the middle of your screen. At the time that it was purchased, it was for the trail. You know, there was anticipation of a project, was what the actual DOT language that we had to use for it to be grant eligible. But we never took formal action as a city to say it's going to be a park or it is a park. All those involved, I believe also even kind of at the council level as we talked about it, all kind of knew that there was probably potential that this could become a park, especially because the trail is going to outlet here. So it's in a way, it's the start to the stub of the trail, but we hadn't taken that action. Going back a year ago to October of 2021, there was a presentation in front of this committee that showed opportunities for some fundraising for the project for the local share if we were awarded a TAP grant. And it included that if this was to become a park naming rights as well as amenities within the project. So Park Commission has approved or had approved of that fundraising campaign. The reason this item is back is in great news fashion, we were awarded that TAP grant. So we know this project is starting to move forward, and we're going to be working on it over the next 18 to 24 months. And one of the tasks of the Friends of the Plover River Crossing was doing and helping the city with the local match. So Steve Menzel, the chair of that committee, is here tonight. We've been working really closely as Steve's been working on the fundraising aspect, going through the different approvals and the different parameters. So in order to consider any of the other elements that affect this project, the first and foremost action is to consider if the city wishes to make this a park. In reviewing this with other city departments, there are no other plans for this parcel. Everyone's in agreement that making this a park seems to make the most logical sense and is supportive. Couple things that are worth noting. This currently is not within the city of Stevens Point, so this is right on the edge of what the border of the town of Hull kind of cut out in that corner is. So we would be taking our action if we choose to do that. That's fine, but there is some zoning things we'd be working through with Portage County, who works with the town of Hull, just to make sure that everything that gets done in the parcel for improvements, believe that or not, would not be permitted on paper, the physical permit through the city, just because of where it's located. Now down the road, obviously there could be things considered with that parcel if we wanted to, but at this point, it would still stay in the town of Hull while we're working through this project. So staff recommendation, the committee's recommendation after reviewing it is that we would dedicate the whole 2.65 acres and that it would become the newest city park here after the action would be formal. It's a recommendation from Park Commission if you so choose, and then it would go on to the City Council at the next council meeting.
All right. Any questions for Director Kramer?
So I'll make a motion to accept it.
All right, so a motion to accept it as this parcel as a city park by Commissioner O'Connor, second by Commissioner Gladowski. Is there any further discussion or questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of accepting this as a city park, or this parcel as a city park, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, agenda item number 5, naming of the parcel in honor of the Peters family and their substantial Plover River Crossing Project donation in accordance with the city's naming rights policy.
So within the naming rights policy, there's several components, but the section that's outlined in the agenda talks about a substantial donation or gift towards the project. The proposal last year showed kind of a range of donations for that to be considered. One of the items was park naming rights. So your last action recommending this to be a park would leave it unnamed. The Friends of the Plover River Crossing have secured a substantial donation from the Peters family. And what staff and the committee is looking for is we've not finalized the exact text of the name. In principle or an idea, what my memo states is that we're looking to get approval to be in the vicinity of the Peters Family Park, and there could be some small component to that if the family would wish. If it was real close, it would not be something that would come back. If the committee's okay with it, it was something that would deviate strongly. Let's say it added something unusual, something that's not in that same realm of the way our parks are named now, it certainly would come back to this body. That park naming, as we all know, when we've done these park namings, they've stayed with the park then, basically into perpetuity. So, most recent examples is like Groholski Park, Kazakowski Park, some of those parks that are like that. So, what would happen here is we're looking for to formalize the donation piece of it towards the project would be acceptance to name the park in honor of that family's donation. And again, we do have Steve if there's other questions about any of those particulars that I couldn't answer.
One of the questions that I have, and it relates to item number 5, 6, and 7, is that in the past when we've had substantial donations for park purposes, we've been given a specific dollar figure, the worth of the donation. So I would like to request that we get that for each of these, number 5, 6, and 7.
Steve, I'm not sure if you're able to, but if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, and if you could even address that in as much detail as you are able, please.
Yep. So just to clarify, these are pledges at this point. So, which is one reason why we didn't want to indicate that up front, but I don't think there's any problem with disclosing that. The parks gift is $50,000. The bridge naming is $150,000. And the boardwalk naming is $50,000.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very substantial and really, a wonderful contribution to the community. So congratulations on securing those.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Steve, before I sit down, I guess, are there any other questions about specifically the agenda item that we're talking about in the naming the park in honor of the Peters family? I hate to have you keep jumping up and sitting down if there's questions.
Yep.
I don't know that my question is whoever it's for, but just wondering if we can have just kind of like a bio or something about the family. I know we talked about this with the Groholskis too, of just saying like, knowing that this will be the name of this park forever, like we want to know that I don't know them personally, so I don't want to offend anyone, but like knowing that they're the people that we want their name to be on a city park forever. So just being conscious of that.
I guess just for clarification, what level of detail, I guess, would you be seeking if we were to do that? Because obviously,
like social security numbers, blood type. Just talking about like who they are and nothing long. Just an idea of, I'm a person that I think about that when I go to a park. Who is this person that it was named after, right? And just having some kind of information.
I would totally agree with you. And there's actually a very compelling story behind the Peters gift too, which we'll be able to tell. And that kind of thing, of course, has to be, the donor needs to be okay with what you say and how much you say and how you say it. So if we do some interpretive signage with that kind of information, we would want them to review it and make sure they're okay. But I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Other questions about the naming? And again, Dan, what you're seeking is approval for this board to pursue and finalize naming rights with the Peters family.
Yep, correct. So we're looking to basically a recommendation to Common Council to state that to finalize the pledge that the name of the park would be in the honor of their family along that Peters Family Park realm, real close.
I will make a motion to approve the naming of the parcel in honor of the Peters family.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Carrie Wynn. All right, we've had a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? All right, and it's surprising for this group. So hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Dan, and again, if there are changes, again, we appreciate you keeping us up to date.
You bet.
Agenda item number 5, number 6. Naming of future boardwalk in honor of Sentry Insurance for their major donation for the Plover River Crossing Project, consistent again with the city's naming rights policy item.
So this item is very similar in fashion. We do know now, since the memo was released or since we've written through it, we have been informed that the naming we're looking for approval on would be the Sentry Boardwalk. So basically, very similar format. What we're looking for would be a recommendation onto the Common Council to name the boardwalk. There would be some signage most likely within the construction of it that would, whether it be on the ends, we're not exactly certain yet, but it would say the Sentry Boardwalk in honor of that contribution.
Questions?
Make a motion, accept it.
Motion
I
by
second.
Koenig, and I saw Alder Shore's hand go up first, so we have a motion to second. Are there any additional questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Moving on to the last of the naming rights. So again, this is the last one, naming rights of a future bridge spanning the Plover River Henneghan Bridge in honor of the Henneghan family and their major donation to the Plover River Crossing Project. Dan.
Very similar. So this one would be right adjacent the boardwalk. So this would be as you're coming across from the Hoffmeister side, I guess would be the first location, or coming across at the end of the boardwalk as you hit the bridge for the Plover River. Looking for approval or recommendation to approve the naming the Henneghan Bridge in honor of the Henneghan family.
I so move.
So moved by Hall.
Second.
Second by Glodowski. Any questions or discussion?
One correction.
Go ahead, Steve.
Henneghan's name is spelled wrong in the agenda. It's a GH, it's a HENNEGHA.
I will fix that. I apologize.
I am very sensitive to that.
So outside of correcting the name, are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to say, I think the board owes all of those people a great thank you, that in this era of tight budgets and stuff, this stuff would never get done without the generosity of our citizens.
Right.
Yeah, I personally want to thank Tori Jennings, who this project would not even have started without her energy. She's been just terrific, and she did most of the work on the TAP grant, which is a huge amount of work. So kudos to her. I think she might be joining us online. She couldn't be here tonight, but I just want to make sure that she gets credit for that.
We appreciate the effort, Steve. It's significant.
Before the vote, I'll add too. I'll just say that in terms of from the staff side of things, working with Steve and Tori has been really great. There's been a ton of work, approvals, other community meetings we've gone to, public input, feedback, working through design processes, even resources that we've been able to connect through the two of them through the university that's been able to do some work that we'd had to have paid for in other cases or reduced fees. So we're really fortunate to have both individuals that have helped us. Obviously, there's a whole team behind them as well, but from me as director as well as the department, thanks a ton for you guys' efforts. And these donations are substantial. They take lots of time, and I can tell you that Steve's been really transparent from the process from the get-go, made it really easy on the comptroller's office the mayor's office as well as the Parks Department kind of getting this all together. So it's an exciting project and not possible without the public-private partnership, and they've been great on the private side helping us out.
So
Also wouldn't have been possible without Dan.
Absolutely. So this isn't necessarily germane to the action we need to take, but how does this change the timeline at all, Steve, in terms with this fundraising coming in as it has? What is the timeline in light of these new donations and the other?
Yeah, I guess Dan might be better at answering that.
So the next step, essentially, these donations bring us real close to what the local match is, and Steve can speak to exactly the kind of works that they've done, but they've most likely exceeded and are doing fantastic on the local match portion of it. We're waiting on the state municipal agreement, so that should be coming any time. We actually thought we might have it already, but the DOT requires us first to do that large agreement. Once the agreement locks in, it makes all of the funds eligible for reimbursement, so we'll immediately hit the ground finishing the design and going through the DOT's process for the actual design. We do anticipate that to take a good portion of '23. What we're really looking at, and actually Tori Jennings and I met with Rettler, who's doing the design work for us just recently, and we talked about, because we have the local match that we do and we have all those other pieces ready, we acquired the property in lieu of the grant. We were ready ahead of time with all of those processes. Once we have the state municipal agreement, we can just get going. So in a perfect world, we'd love to be doing something by the end of '23. But I say that with caution. I think realistically, we're trying for that timeline, but we're probably looking for '24 to be sometime when we're actually trying to get in the ground. There is some construction sequences around some of the habitat in that area we have to be sensitive of. And so some of that, the winter is really an area we'd like to be in because there's just some easier, we're not affecting as much in that area if we're in the winter. So that's our next wild card. But once we get that agreement done, we'll have a better idea. But we're shooting for something in '23 and definitely in '24.
Great. Appreciate that clarification. Again, going back to the motion, we have a motion and a second to follow through on the naming rights of the Henneghan Bridge. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Steve, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving down to Director's Report. Agenda item number 8. Dan?
Okay, we have quite a bit going on. I just wanted to give some brief updates. The 2023 capital budget has been completed, so that's all been approved. Really, the large items for us in this budget season or next budget year is the band shell repairs for the roof as well as the support beam. We are hoping to be able for bid for that already next week to the week after, trying to get somebody on board for a spring work on that. We do have the budget now to try to do both. The Willett roof replacement, or repair, I should say, of taking off the foam and repairing it correctly is also in the budget. So that's a pretty major project, which will be happening at the same time, hopefully, as the team room addition. But that project, we will be out for bid before the end of the year as well. The other ones that were included was Cash's surfacing. So that surfacing has been there about 15 years, and it's really brittle. It's breaking all over. We've been patching it. That's the lifespan of that. But the playground hopefully will last another 15 to 20 years. So that'll be coming out. We'll be putting a new port in place back in. I don't know if the color will be the same vibrancy. There's some more cost on that. We're working through that process, but that'll be a big project. And that's such a busy playground. Trying to close that to do that is going to be the most difficult part. So we're going to have to be creative on that piece. Other than that, we have a small pot of money in the pool, the guardhouse, trying to do some repairs to some roofing and some of the crack and tuck pointing on that too. I think we have $20,000 for that. So that's really some touch up. That building is quite dated. We've done a lot of repairs over there. That's what's left here to kind of touch up. On the operational budget side, just so everyone's aware, we did have the budget presentation to the Finance Committee. I believe that was last week, I think. So we're getting in the later stages of that. There's still a few things that are being looked at by the Comptroller and Mayor's Office that I think will be finalizing as they head towards finance going forward here. But that project or that process should finish up in November. So by next month, we'll know exactly where the operational budget. We were given a directive of 0% for the discretionary items for department heads, and then they've been really targeting the pay plan for employees. We had 2.52, I believe, net new construction. So that's getting into the finance realm of it, but just so you know where we're kind of at, it's going to be a tight budget season. Just, as things have gone up, as we know, we weren't able to get the same dollars for the discretionary items, but the finance and the council has been working hard trying to take care of the employees as best as they can. So moving forward, other projects that we're trying to wrap up this year, in Forest Cemetery, there's a building in the middle of it you're probably familiar with. It's got a real steep pitch roof. We did need to put a new roof on that. It was leaking, and some siding and windows. That project is actually right underway now. We struggled to find a contractor, but we were able to, and we'll have that done hopefully here yet in the next couple of weeks. I think they actually have all the siding peeled off, and they're putting some of the new stuff in already. They're waiting on a window, I believe, just because of supply chain, but that's coming together very, very well. The Gerke Park and Community Stadium project update, just as a reminder, we are actually out for bid as of today for the second time. We've done some modifications. So my hope is we open the bids, if we receive them, and we hope to, November 17th. Right after Thanksgiving, when we come back and meet in December, we hope to have the new numbers, and we're hoping those are within budget, and we can be recommending awards. So that'll be coming back to you next month, and that's the team room addition, ticket booth, all those other components. On the Emerson Park project, there's some exciting news over there. Actually, the equipment is at the site today already. They hope to do stripping of the topsoil for the next couple days, and the playground is scheduled to be installed on Wednesday. So there was a great ceremony there on Saturday that I think you'll be reading about soon. There's some other information that'll likely be coming before the Park Commission in a very similar capacity of what came tonight for the Plover River Crossing, about some naming rights for playgrounds, things of that nature, from some substantial contributions they've received. But the good news is we hope to have, and we're going to have, as long as the weather holds out, a playground that can be played on here, by mid-November is our goal. So there'll be some concrete work that has to finish in the spring. But what will happen between now and Wednesday is the whole site will be excavated. The playground's about a 2-day install, so by next Thursday night they should be done with it. Then we'll try to put the chips in. We're set up to do that Friday of next week, and then everything should be cured enough that we can actually let children on it. And it's been a long time coming, and a lot of excited people. So there's more plans for that. There'll be a lot more happening, but that's going to really be a big, exciting thing for the community as you drive by it. I didn't miss anything on that, I think, right? Is that pretty much it?
That's good.
Okay. All right. On the then lastly, just on Riverfront Rendezvous, just as an update, we are June 30th, July 1st and 2nd next year. It's going to be a very busy year because of the golf tournament at the same time. So we are on the back end of that. So we were able to carve out the rooms we needed to and reserve the rooms we needed to for the bands that we needed, but it's going to be busy. So we're always busy, but we're anticipating all those extra people being in town. We're going to be a great outlet for them to come down. So we're excited about it. We'll be up for the challenge. We'll definitely be planning, but there's some extra strain, as you can imagine, planning EMS services when they're covering police and fire and things over there, as well as our location. So police and fire have been great. We've been meeting with them regularly, getting ready, kind of planning out how that looks and making plans. But yeah, I would say that fireworks night is always packed, but I'm sure we're going to be even more packed than we typically are. So a lot of exciting stuff there. We're going to keep moving forward. We're actually hoping to bring bingo back. I got a call that somebody might be interested in doing that. So if we can get that back on the docket, that would be great. But mark your calendars. We will be doing the announcement for the actual headliners typically right after the first of the year. And then we'll announce the full lineup as we head towards April. So that's what we got for Riverfront.
All right, questions for Dan? All right, thank you, Dan. We'll move on to the last agenda item on the before us today, and it's adjournment. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Connick, is there a second? Come on, somebody's got a second. We're here all night. Sue Hall.
Can we discuss it first?
Yeah. We like to. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much, folks. We're in adjournment.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.